photograph that
I have a last question for you. Do you know that it is a criminal offense to lie to Congress?
I am very well aware of that.
Chris Van Hollen just torched Todd Blanche over Trump's controversial anti-weaponization fund, and the hearing turned explosive fast. Van Hollen pressed Blanche on whether January 6 rioters who attacked police officers could qualify for payouts. Blanche refused to rule it out, admitting anybody in this country could apply. Unlike similar programs, no federal judge approved the fund, and Blanche personally controls all 5 commissioners with virtually zero oversight. Then came the Epstein fallout. Survivors are furious after Blanche claimed he met with them, but when asked to promise he would never support a pardon for Ghislaine Maxwell, he dodged the question. The hearing completely erupted when Van Hollen revealed that one pardoned individual accused of abusing 2 children allegedly tried to buy the victim's silence using expected money from the fund. Blanche accused the senator of lying, but Van Hollen fired back immediately. Do you understand it's a crime to lie to Congress? Watch the moment Van Hollen exposes what critics say is Trump's personal attorney now controlling the Justice Department.
Thank you, Senator Collins. Senator Van Hollen. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Attorney General, this is an outrageous, unprecedented slush fund that you set up. Simple question. Will individuals who assaulted Capitol Hill police officers be eligible for this fund?
Well, as it makes plain, anybody is...
Just let me know if they're eligible for the fund.
As was made plain yesterday, anybody in this country is eligible to apply if they believe they were a victim of weaponization.
Mr. Attorney General, let me ask you this. Are there going to be rules that say that if you've assaulted a Capitol Hill police officer or committed a violent crime, you will not be eligible? Why not make that a rule?
I expect that, because I'm not one of the commissioners setting up the rules, I expect that there will be rules.
You're appointing 4 of the 5 members, aren't you, Mr. Attorney General?
Pardon me?
You're appointing 4 of the 5 members.
I am appointing all 5 members.
You can certainly set up the rules. I would hope you would make a rule that anyone convicted of assaulting a police officer of a violent crime is simply not eligible. They should not apply.
Well,
let me ask you this, because you compared it to the Keepsiegel case. But I think you know full well that in that case, the settlement agreement was approved by a federal judge, including the payments to people who were not originally parties to the lawsuit. No federal judge has approved this fund, have they, Mr. Attorney General?
No federal judge did approve this.
So that's a big difference between this case and the case that you compared it to.
No, it's not.
Did a judge sign off on this case?
No.
A judge did sign off on the other one.
Yes, but your question was whether it's a big difference. It's not.
Of course it is, because that allows for an independent person to look at it rather than the
There was no independence. There was no independence. There was a single commissioner. A judge signed off on it. A judge had nothing to do with deciding the money.
There was a judge who looked at it and signed off on it. So to compare that case to this one is incredibly deceptive. Let me ask you this about the Epstein case, because as we speak, many Epstein survivors are in New York. They're reading portions of the Epstein files about the abuse that they suffered. Otherwise, they might have been here with us today. At a House hearing, your predecessor refused to acknowledge the pain experienced by some of those victims when the administration improperly released their names in identifying information. So I want to know where you stand. I spoke to the representatives of some of the Epstein survivors yesterday. They are extremely frustrated that you keep calling for people to come forward with more evidence, but you have not met with them to hear their stories. So simple question. If I connect you with these survivors, will you meet with them?
Absolutely. And what you just said is false. I have met with them. I've met with many of the lawyers for the survivors of victims, as did Attorney General Bondi. So whoever told you that, unfortunately, gave you bad information.
Okay.
But I would encourage them. I would encourage them to reach out to the Department of Justice, because like we do every single day, we absolutely care for victims, and we absolutely want to hear from them and their lawyers.
Well, I've been told directly from the representatives they've not had a chance, at least this group, to meet with you. So
did they represent that they asked?
So I'm glad to hear that.
Did they represent they asked for a meeting?
Can I ask you to commit that the Justice Department will not recommend a pardon for anyone named in the Epstein files?
Can you repeat that question? I'm sorry. I didn't hear what you said.
Can you commit that the Justice Department, you, the acting Attorney General, will not recommend a pardon for people named in the Epstein files?
When you say people named, there's tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of, quote, people named.
How about Ghislaine Maxwell? Can you commit that you will?
Yes, I can commit to that, of course.
Okay. Let me go back to this slush fund, because there's also an individual who, after being pardoned by the president, went on to molest 2 children. And that person actually tried to buy the silence of these children by saying that he would pay them some of the funds that he was hoping to get from your slush fund. Can you commit to making the rules so that that person is not eligible for a payout under this fund?
Well, you're obviously lying in your question, because there's no way that this person committed to that. The slush fund, as you call it, which is not, didn't exist.
I'm sure,
but I can commit.
Mr. Attorney General, don't ever do that again. I am reporting
do what again?
What he said. He said on the expectation that he hoped to get some of the funds from a payout. He's been hearing what
you
we've
said
all
from
been
the
hearing.
slush fund, Senator, and that didn't exist when he said that.
This is the fund that the president and all of you have been telegraphing all along that you're going to use to help the president's friends.
Can you point to a
Mr.
single
Attorney General,
telegraph
I have a
I
last
made?
question.
What telegraph did I
have a last question for
Okay.
you. Do you know that it is a criminal offense to lie to Congress?
I am very well aware of that.
I'm glad to hear that. Thank you.
Attorney General Blanche, for appearing before us today. I want to talk about some areas where I think we're making progress and we can work together, and then raise some real concerns I have. I do think it's worth recognizing the hard work of the men and women of the department and the progress you're making on combating fentanyl and violent crime. I've long been involved in criminal justice reform, talked with and worked with your predecessor on this. I was pleased to see the president's message during Second Chance Month, where he said he wants to ensure those who take responsibility and seek to rebuild their lives have a chance to succeed. Senator Lee and I have a bill called the Safer Supervision Act. It's co-sponsored by Senators Tillis and Wicker, Kramer and Langford. It's got strong law enforcement and conservative support, and it fits squarely in that framework. Currently, federal supervision is imposed in nearly every case, leading to badly overworked federal probation officers who then can't properly supervise those who actually most need it. There's more than 120,000 people on average per year being supervised, and this bill would help ensure courts are more thoughtful, more analytic when deciding when to impose supervision. Is this a piece of legislation you can support?
So what you just said, I very much agree with. So without looking at every word of the legislation, there's no disagreement from me on a word you just uttered.
Well, thank you. I'd like to work with you on that.
Yes, I look forward to that.
Let me raise 2 questions. I've been gravely concerned about IP theft, especially from China, the whole time I've served. I was struck that the department's proposed budget cuts the funds for IP enforcement. Why? And is the department under your leadership committed to protecting American innovation?
Very committed. And while you're calling it a cut, Senator, I would say that it's a major focus of every...
It's a lack of an increase?
Well, no. I don't mean lack of an increase. I mean that we're focused on it at the U.S. Attorney's Office level. So when we take money and spend it around the U.S. Attorney's offices, and so it's baked into that big number, rest assured, every U.S. Attorney's Office, all 93 of them, are focused on the threats that we have from there. And so we're trying to spend our money more wisely.
Chair Collins raised a concern about the Violence Against Women Act funds. Let me raise a concern about the Victims of Child Abuse Act programs. Senator Roy Blunt and I worked to reauthorize this program. I've long been actively engaged with it. I've seen how children's advocacy centers in Delaware make a critical difference, bringing together law enforcement, mental health professionals to do child abuse investigations in a child-centered way to make sure children are not re-victimized. The number of victims served by these centers has increased 4-fold over 25 years. Why are you proposing cutting this program?
So we have asked for $41 million for that program, and I agree with you, and I want to work with you to make sure that we're spending that $41 million where we should. I agree with you; it's extraordinarily important, and has had a lot of success over the past 15, 20 years as it's been up and running.
Thank you. Let me return to the line of questioning from the ranking member, Senator Van Hollen, that I strongly agree with. I'm just looking at the settlement agreement in
Yes.
Trump versus IRS. And I just want to make sure I heard you properly when you responded previously. Your announcement said that the fund will send you quarterly reports. Will you commit to making these reports fully public so Americans know who's getting taxpayer dollars out of the settlement fund? This says they'll be confidential. This is Section 4, Part E of the settlement agreement.
The reason why I want to be careful in my answer is because there's obviously laws that exist around privacy that may prevent some of the information that the commission takes in from being fully public. Beyond that, there will be full transparency, and I commit to you that beyond the applicable laws that exist around privacy and privileges and whatnot. But as far as being transparent and having those quarterly reports released, yes.
Thank you. You referenced a previous case. I think it was Keepsiegel versus Vilsack under the previous administration. Did that case involve a president suing his own government and then settling that case before it could be reviewed or approved by a judge?
So no, neither does the commission.
It did not. And so when you suggested that they're nearly identical, they're not identical. I think there's a critical difference here. President Trump is the first president to sue his own government and then direct his chosen acting attorney general to reach this kind of settlement. Will you commit that none of President Trump's family will receive a direct payout from this fund?
Well, yes, but what you just said is not true. I mean, if I can correct that.
Please.
The president did not direct me to do anything. And secondly, when we said it was that the structure of the commission is similar to Keepsiegel, that's true. It wasn't the case. The underlying case is not the same. The structure of the commission is the same as the Keepsiegel
commission. Has it ever happened that a sitting president sued his own government for $10 billion and then directed the settlement of the case and the establishment of a payout fund?
Not that I'm aware, but there's a lot of things that President Trump's the first of. No president had been indicted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
Correct.
6, 7, 8 times either.
Correct. No president's been indicted. And will you commit that none of this money will go to President Trump's campaign donors?
I am not committing to anything beyond the settlement agreement itself. When you say campaign donors, that they are not excluded from seeking compensation.
Last question. During Police Week, I heard from a number of law enforcement friends who found it appalling that there was the possibility that folks like the Oath Keepers, the Proud Boys, who had assaulted Capitol police officers, could receive multi-million-dollar payouts from this fund. Will you commit that no one who has been convicted of assaulting a police officer will receive a payout from this fund?
So I shared the concerns that apparently members of law enforcement gave to you last week, although none of this was announced last week, so that's surprising. But
they had heard rumors there would be a settlement fund.
Okay, but anybody can apply. The commission will set. The commissioners will set rules. I'm sure. That's not for me to set. That's for the commissioners. And whether an individual, an oath keeper, as you just mentioned, applies for compensation, is anybody in this country can apply.
Well, we'll be watching this very closely as this goes forward. I don't think the settlement fund should be set up this way or for these purposes. I appreciate your answers today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Chris Van Hollen just exposed what critics are calling one of the most dangerous power grabs inside Trump's Justice Department. Todd Blanche, Trump's former personal defense attorney, is now serving as acting attorney general and overseeing a controversial anti-weaponization compensation fund with almost no independent oversight. Van Hollen argued this fund could potentially reward people involved in politically charged prosecutions, including January 6 defendants accused of attacking Capitol police officers. When pressed during the hearing, Blanche refused to clearly rule them out. The controversy goes far beyond politics. Blanche isn't a longtime neutral DOJ leader. He personally represented Trump in multiple criminal investigations, including the New York hush money case where Trump was convicted on 34 felony counts. He also defended Trump in the federal classified documents case and the election interference investigation before both cases were later dismissed after Trump returned to office. After years as a federal prosecutor and later a top corporate attorney, Blanche left his elite law firm in 2023 specifically to defend Trump, calling it an opportunity he couldn't pass up. Trump later rewarded that loyalty by appointing him Deputy Attorney General before eventually promoting him to acting AG after firing Pam Bondi in 2026. Now critics say Blanche is using that power to create what Van Hollen described as an unprecedented political payout system controlled almost entirely from inside Trump's Justice Department. During the hearing, tensions exploded after Blanche accused a senator of lying, prompting Van Hollen to remind him directly that lying to Congress is a federal offense. The clash has now become a major flashpoint over whether the Justice Department is protecting the rule of law